Welcome to today's Verism Ask the Expert session. I'm Christine Barnhart, and I'm the VP of Product Strategy and Go-to-Market at Verism. And I am really delighted to be joined today by Danny Ramos from Verism's product management team. So Danny, before we jump in to MRO optimization and risk reduction, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you do at Verism?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that intro, Christine. So like Christine mentioned, my name is Danny Ramos. I am a product manager here on the team at Verism. I've been in the software industry for about 10 years, with half of that in sales, the other half in the product management world. I've been with Verism since July of 2021. In that time, I've had an opportunity to work alongside of our customers and our great industry advisors on board to really understand and dive into the world of MRO, understand the challenges that our users are facing, and help put out products that drive resilience and drop costs, all while making it easier to manage your materials.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny. That's a great intro. For everyone listening, please make sure you use the chat or the Q&A feature in Zoom if you want to ask a question or provide comments or insights. We have planned for a Q&A period toward the end of the session, but I don't want you to feel like you have to wait to ask. Danny and I are both pretty conversational. I think we really enjoy comments, questions, insights. And so on that note, I'm not going to talk to you today. I'm going to turn this over to Danny, but watch your chat because I may ask you guys some questions as we go along. So Danny, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I am going to need you to let me share the screen though, if you don't mind.
Oh my goodness. We should have worked that out before we started, Danny. I have no idea.
Fortunately, we're all very accustomed to Zoom.
Yeah,
in 2022.
exactly. It's Crawford's meeting. Oh, all panelists. There we go. Try it now.
Awesome. There we go.
If it wasn't for technology, what would we do?
All right. So
before you start, for those of you listening, throw in the chat, like who you are and where you're from, please. All right, Danny.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit real quickly to just kind of level set here on the current state of supply chain. There's really no need to belabor the point that the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing war in the Ukraine, a number of other issues have really just increased the uncertainty in the world over the last few years. And by all indications, that uncertainty is looking like it's going to be around for at least a while longer. And really, in a lot of ways, that just accelerated trends that were already happening before the pandemic. Supply chains were getting really long before the pandemic. There was a lot of dependency on offshore resources and kind of reaching across borders, to say nothing of a workforce that was already aging out and leaving the industry before these challenges were facing us. And while we're talking about supply chain generally, MRO is certainly not immune to some of these challenges. And really, a lot of the issues that we've seen kind of in the industry at large are also applicable here in the world of MRO, right? There is still a lot of that uncertainty driving a lot of guessing and trying to figure out what's going to be the best approach. There's not a ton of visibility. Folks have spent a lot of time and effort and energy implementing and digitizing their supply chain, but they're still running into issues where they can't see what they need to see to make decisions in a timely and effective manner. Obviously everybody has been faced with lengthy lead times, not just in the direct materials world, but in the world of MRO, inventory is getting hit across the board. And the talent retention issue, again, is something that we're seeing across the board. There's a lot of folks that have been in the industry for a long time that are aging out. There's a lot of challenges trying to get younger millennials and Gen Z folks into the industry as well. It's seen as kind of a stagnant place to be. So a lot of the challenges that we're seeing on generally in the world of supply chain are also very, very applicable in the world of MRO. Fortunately, though, we're kind of at that sweet spot where artificial intelligence and machine learning have really kind of stepped out from the labs and are now in a world where they're really practical, and there's legitimate applications of this technology that's making the world a lot better. And as we see here, Gartner's expecting that by 2026, more than 50% of supply chain organizations are going to be using machine learning to augment their decision-making capabilities. And really, this helps in a couple of different ways. Obviously, artificial intelligence and machine learning has the ability to parse through data in ways that the human brain really can't do, helping kind of bubble up anomalies or interesting things for folks to look at and dig into a bit more deeply. But also, and something that I think we'll see here in a minute with Verism, enables humans to make better decisions because it kind of covers their blind spot. So not only, are we augmenting decisions, but you're getting to those better decisions faster, leveraging this technology that can look at all of this data that you've been collecting over the last 20 years in the world of ERP. And fortunately, the MRO space is a great place to start kind of kicking the tires on some of this artificial intelligence and machine learning if you haven't done so already. It might seem a little counterintuitive to start with MRO when your direct materials are going to be a much bigger piece of the pie when we're talking about your inventory, but there's a lot of upsides to utilizing MRO as a space for experimentation. It's often an overlooked area of potential, but it is an incredibly important piece of your operations. If your lines are down, it doesn't really matter. You still can't make anything. Making MRO a really important place to hit. You can help eliminate that downtime, again, keeping those lines up and running without as many snags and issues and things like that. But also, again, it's a nice place to kind of sandbox some of this new functionality, some of these new AI models, some of this new machine learning, and really bring it out into test it kind of in a smaller space, pilot it out, and then expand into bigger chunks of your operation from there. The last piece here that I definitely want to make sure we touch on is that bit about transferring that institutional knowledge before it leaves. It is absolutely critical to make sure that as folks are exiting the workforce, and as they leave with 20, 30, 40 years of knowledge about what makes your facilities run, that before that they leave, you get that information so that the next folks coming in behind them aren't at a disadvantage. And how can Verism help you do all of these things, right? How can Verism help drive some of that intelligence to make some of those better decisions, make sure you're capturing that institutional knowledge, make sure you're minimizing your risk while also minimizing your costs? Well, we do that through a couple of different approaches, right? So we have, a couple of different modules that we're bringing out into the world. We have our trusted material and trusted network modules, which we'll talk to in a bit more depth today. But really, all of that is underpinned by a foundation of data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and optimization engines. With Verism, you're very much getting data science in a box. In ways that don't require you to, hire data science teams and train data science teams and build, cultural knowledge in those, for those folks. We provide all of that for you, so you don't have to, go through that process. And we're able to drive some really compelling outcomes as a result. So making sure that you're looking across your entire enterprise and utilizing the existing inventory that you have in creative ways that help reduce resilience, identifying opportunities for you to reduce your working capital. We make it incredibly simple for you to harmonize your material data and understand really what it is that you have. And truly hit that goal of inventory optimization, where you're not just looking at how can I reduce my costs, but really taking a look at how can I strike that kind of ideal balance between low working capital and low risk to ensure that everything stays up and running without holding on to too much. And what about Verism's particular brand of artificial intelligence and machine learning makes it so advantageous for folks that are really trying to explore this new technology space for the first time within their organization? First and foremost, we deliver probability-based outcomes. I am constantly amazed anytime I get an opportunity to peek behind the curtain with a client organization or with a user, and they show me this really extensive and impressive Excel spreadsheet that they've built that's got all sorts of dashboarding and cool things like that baked in. Really, really impressive stuff, but there's a lot of fragility in that. It's a really brittle system. It doesn't learn with you. You're very much adhering to the rules that you have put in place. Anytime you want to make any changes, you have to go in there and make those changes. We take all of that out of the equation and really deliver probability-based outcomes that help you determine just how risky is this policy, and allows you to adjust with that confidence. We do not require that you do any type of data cleanse or anything like that. So it is an incredibly light lift to get the benefits of the Verism platform using the data that you already have today. So you don't have to spend 12 or 18 or 24 months doing a data cleanse project before you can get value. You can send data our way and we can spit out meaningful outcomes for you relatively quickly. To that point, minimal IT resources. This is not a heavy lift. This is not a huge burden that you're going to have to get a bunch of folks involved. You can get quite a lot out with very little kind of resource commitment from Verism. And the nice thing is we make it a very simple to use platform. We'll show you some bits of the platform here in a second, but it's really intuitive. We make these dashboards and reporting simple and easy to understand. We make our inventory recommendations simple and easy to understand. So there's not a lot of manual training. You don't have to spend a bunch of time and effort walking your folks through the product to get them up to speed. If they're familiar with really any kind of business software, they can pick it up and hit the ground running pretty quickly. And again, fast return on investment. And that's for a couple of reasons, as I've mentioned. Really, really light on the resource front. So it doesn't take a lot of effort internally, and you don't have to do a ton of cleansing your data. You don't have to do a ton of pre-work before you can, pull out that value. It's available to you really, really quickly. And the last piece here is one that I think is kind of the most interesting, at least for me personally, right? Is we're able to capture that intelligence from your users. We're able to capture that information that lives in the head of that reliability engineer who's been servicing this particular machine for 20 years, and take that knowledge and put that back into the platform and continuously learn. And that drives better recommendations and better suggestions for you as we continue to spend time understanding not only what your data looks like, but what your expectations are from an inventory policy perspective. So that all sounds great. What are some of the things that we can actually deliver for y'all with this artificial intelligence and this machine learning? The first bit there is around ensuring that production continuity. As I mentioned earlier, it is a kind of well-established challenge. It's difficult to understand where your materials are. It's difficult to understand how quickly you're going to be able to get those things, and being able to leverage the intelligence that Verism has, we're able to really drive home the ability to, again, reduce that risk and make sure that you have exactly what you need, where you need it, when you need it, to make sure that that your production is disrupted as little as possible. We present you opportunities to eliminate your wasted working capital. So not only are we going to make suggestions on your policy, whether you should have more or less of a particular material, but we'll also make some suggestions on ways you can leverage that existing inventory across your network. So even if you do have overmax in one facility, we're going to suggest ways that you can intelligently utilize that in other places to make sure you're not wasting that capital you have tied up. We're able to optimize those inventory levels. Like I mentioned, not only do we have recommendations that suggest ways that you can lower your inventory, but we also have the other side of that coin, those recommendations where we're suggesting you might want to increase what you're holding for this based on lead time and things like this, to make sure that you have exactly what you need and that you're eliminating that risk alongside of it. Ultimately, enabling strategic decisions. Like I mentioned, this is kind of one of the nicest things about artificial intelligence is, by being able to analyze data in ways that the human brain just can't do, we make it easier to make the right decision much more quickly, much more easily. We also make it incredibly simple for you to understand exactly what you have. Verism plays really nicely with your existing ERP, and we're able to provide visibility really across the entire enterprise in ways that are incredibly difficult to do in a lot of current installations. and often require internal tooling and things like that to help folks identify where those materials are. And really, we're helping you make your way down the path of eventually getting to a digitally connected value chain. So, right now we're just talking about MRO, but the expansion there, is, and kind of the thinking there is to get you to that final place where everything is connected and you truly have, kind of that ecosystem type view that really drives greater resilience. So let's take a look at a couple of pieces here in the application. So this is the dashboard that comes alongside of our trusted material product. As you'll see here, we got a couple of things that we're showing just in this view here. We'll give you a glimpse into kind of what that overall inventory on hand is for your organization. Give you a sense of what that, kind of the MRO inventory is. We'll also showcase the opportunity that Verism has identified to reduce some of that working capital and provide really easy to understand dashboard widgets and metrics. So executives can see that progress in real time as folks are going through recommendations. We also provide a similar view of this for facility leadership. So facility by facility, folks can understand what their specific on-hand inventory is, what their specific opportunity is, and how the folks within their facility are moving through the recommendations that Verism has presented to understand kind of how far the process they've made it. This is probably one of my favorite features. It's an incredibly compelling and powerful bit of functionality. Our global material search really provides great visibility into not only what materials you have, but where those materials live. And as you can see here, we also tied this into kind of the data harmonization component of our application to show you those materials that we think might be duplicate. So it's a great way to quickly identify alternatives without having to do a ton of work. And as you go through the process of identifying those duplicates and harmonizing that data, this search only gets more powerful as we're able to present that information to you, kind of in one view. Again, the nice thing with this as well is that if you have different instances of ERPs at different facilities, Verism is a place that brings all of that information together. So folks can easily hop in here, type in a material number, type in a description, kind of search as they'd like to search, and identify really, really quickly where a given material might be, and identify opportunities to get their hands on materials that they might need that might live at other facilities. Our inventory optimization cards allow for users at facilities to go through and look material by material to understand what opportunity that they're going to have, from either a savings or a risk mitigation perspective to if they change their inventory policy there. So on these cards here, we present you all the information that it's a great question, Cedric. I'll get to that here in a second. We provide you all the information that you need to make a decision on whether or not the policy that you have in place is the right policy. One of the things that I really enjoy about this as well is that it gives you an opportunity to really think about, an inventory policy you might not have thought about before, and use it as an opportunity to kind of gauge your risk tolerance, your risk profile on a facility by facility basis, because you're able to see in real time with data, are we overly aggressive with, overly conservative with our inventory policy? Are we holding way too much? And the nice thing is with the Verism platform is we'll catch you on the other side with those risk reduction recommendations if you are being too aggressive, and suggest ways that we can cover your six a little bit there as well. So Cedric, great question here in the chat there, asking about overcoming inconsistent material descriptions. And that's actually where we leverage our natural language processing and the data harmonization piece to take a look at a couple of different factors. So we'll look at the manufacturer, we'll look at MPNs, we'll look at those descriptions and break those apart into their component pieces and try to understand those similarities, and then present those to you and an easy to use UI that shows, kind of the materials that we think might be duplicates. So a human can go in there and review and actually determine yes, no, I'm not quite sure on whether or not a material is a duplicate. And then once a material has been kind of confirmed as a duplicate, that information rolls its way through the rest of the system, which is how you'll see it, kind of in that search view and in something I'll show here in a second. But great question. So I appreciate you dropping that in there. And the final piece, and this is new and exciting stuff in the world of Verism, fairly recently released functionality, is our trusted network functionality. So this is how you're able to really manage your materials across your entire enterprise, which it's incredibly compelling. We give you the ability to create networks that make the most sense to you. So if you want to configure networks by business unit or by region, or kind of choose your own adventure there, that's really, really easy to do. And what this will do is generate recommendations for materials that you can share across that network of facilities. So, a task that might take 3 to 6 or 9 months, if you're trying to pull records from various ERPs, trying to cram things into spreadsheets, trying to do that kind of analysis, we're able to do in a matter of hours with you. Just by generating these kinds of network recommendations based on the networks that you have kind of identified. We also have the ability to generate some networks that our machine learning and our artificial intelligence thinks might be good ways to share material. So not only do you have the opportunity to kind of look at some, we'll call them obvious opportunities to share based on, again, things like business unit or region or what have you. You'll also get an opportunity to view some non-intuitive, non-intuitive recommendations for materials that you might be able to share that you might not quite have thought about, or non-intuitive pairings of facilities that you might not have thought about. So, that's another way in which that the artificial intelligence and the machine learning is driving, greater resilience and helping humans make more interesting and more correct decisions by identifying things that they might not have found otherwise.
Hi, Danny. Can I stop you for just 1 minute? We had a couple of questions come in through the Q&A that I think we should probably go ahead and talk about. So the first one is from Lorenzo, and thank you so much for being with us, Lorenzo, asking about the data types that we're getting from the ERP systems to be able to analyze the stock. And he gave some examples, like available stock, stock on hold. Are we looking at stock statuses as part of how we're defining, recommendations and things?
Yeah, great question, Lorenzo. So at this point, we're not taking a look at that stock status, but we are taking a look at all sorts of your goods movement and purchase order history to help understand historically how is this material kind of moved through your network, and how have you been purchasing it, and use that alongside lead time and things like that to get to our recommendations on both the inventory reduction and on the risk reduction side.
Awesome. Thank you. The second question, which I think is going to be a little more challenging for you to answer, are around language limitations. When we think about natural language processing, how do, English versus French versus German or Spanish or Chinese, how does that play in?
Yeah, no, great question. Cedric coming through with fantastic questions. Really appreciate it.
We're gonna have Cedric on all these calls.
So, fortunately, we have some of the most intelligent folks I've ever worked with in my entire life over on our data science team who do all of that modeling. And we actually are currently working with a client who's providing us their material descriptions in Portuguese. So we do have the ability to accommodate different languages as they come in. At this point, the application is kind of an English only platform. So as far as kind of what's in the UI and what the look and feel is, that's the case there. But in terms of ingesting information and ingesting those descriptions, we can certainly work with more languages than just English.
And I would, Cedric, let you know that because I'm the VP of product strategy, right? We are definitely looking at from a UI perspective, kind of where we go in terms of, a second, a third, a fourth language. So it is on the radar. At this point, we really have not had a customer that's been like, it must be in German or it must be in Spanish. And so we haven't pursued it probably as aggressively as we should, but it is definitely something that we know, we need to accommodate moving forward. Thanks, Danny.
Awesome. Thanks, Christine. So a couple things here just to show you that we're not just making it up. So these are some of the things that some of the outcomes that Verism users have seen by utilizing our platform. And there's a lot on here, so I'll let y'all kind of read through it. But the things that I wanted to absolutely make sure that we highlighted are, right here, $20 million of verified inventory reduction opportunity in less than 90 days. An 8x return on investment in 4 months. So when I say that we're able to really turn around your investment quickly and really drive some savings and drive some outcomes for you very quickly with very limited effort, small teams, little lift, we have the evidence that backs up that folks are absolutely able to do that. I mean, a 20% impact on working capital in year one utilizing Verism is a big chunk. And again, all done relatively quickly with a pretty small team. And as you see here, working across 6 global zones. So we have the flexibility to work, internationally without any real challenges. Another example here where for another one of our clients, we're able to identify $20 million in savings in 45 days, an 8x return on their ROI in less than 90 days, and a $40 million working capital reduction in less than 12 months. So again, we're really able to very quickly get in, take your data, understand and analyze it, and present you high value opportunities to drive that working capital down very quickly. And again, only 5 resources really driving their inventory strategy, and they're able to achieve this, in incredibly short time spans. And then finally, this is probably one of my favorite case studies because it's not just the kind of day in and day out savings, but it really highlights how Verism is able to help you out in a bind. We had one of our users, they had 2 critical assets that failed. They picked up the phone, they looked through SAP, they called their colleagues, they called the vendors, and identified that there was not really going to be a chance that they were going to be able to find this material in the time that was going to, prevent a major outage and a major downtime. Fortunately, one of their reliability managers, rather, hopped into Verism, typed the material into our search functionality, and was able to identify other facilities nearby that had it. They overnighted the part to them, and were able to get their line back up in a matter of days as opposed to a matter of weeks, saving them just in this one instance, nearly $1 million by preventing that downtime from really creeping out into to much scarier territory. So if there are no more questions, I'll go ahead and dive in. I wanted to showcase a few things in the application itself. So this is what the Verism platform looks like today. Here's what that dashboard looks like. But what I really wanted to highlight was some of the search functionalities specifically, and some of what we're able to do with the data harmonization outputs. So as you can see here, typed in a material. One of the things I do want to call out is even right here within the search results, you already get to see how powerful this can be. You get some kind of high level information here that's useful, but you can see exactly other facilities that do have this particular material. So again, if you're in that situation where a line has gone down or something like that has happened, you need a material quickly, Verism can very easily identify those potential alternatives for you. And speaking of kind of identifying alternatives, we'll show you those materials that we either know to be a definite duplicate because somebody from your team has gone into our platform and confirmed that this material is indeed a duplicate, or things that we think might be duplicates, again, based on things like manufacturer part number, and some of the information that we're able to glean from the description. The same kind of inventory availability piece is baked into this as well, and you can see those other places in which this material is held. What I'd like to show, though, is what kinds of insights that we are able to grab from your data once we get that confirmation that what we're looking at here is indeed a duplicate. So for this particular material, we've identified 2 additional duplicates of it. And now we're able to present you an aggregated view of that information and really all of the kind of the purchase history and things like that, that again would take months to do otherwise. So without having to do a data cleanse, without having to massage your data, without having to do any of that kind of stuff, simply confirming a suggestion that the AI model has spit out for you, you're able to get to this level of detail. So diving into this page here a bit, you're able to see kind of how that material price has changed over time across your entire network. And scrolling through here, you can see there's some outliers here, and conversely, there are some lower prices here as well, right? So it gives you an opportunity to really look and think about your material procurement strategy with a bit more data and a bit more confidence kind of behind it, without you really having to do all that much work to get to this view here. Another kind of piece of note on this page here is we'll let you actually compare the different vendors you're getting these duplicated materials from in an easy to view kind of screen here, and really highlight things that matter the most to you, so we can show you how is that purchase cost changed on a vendor by vendor perspective. In this case, we're looking at over the last 12 months, and how is that lead time similarly shifted, in that same time frame. And finally, this bit here will show you the various quantities that you're picking up from your different vendors. So you have an opportunity to identify, is this something that we can consolidate vendors, or, is there a better price that we can negotiate, things like that. All of that information, again, that would take you a long time to gather manually, is all visible right here for every material that you have told us is a confirmed duplicate. Real quick, so Lorenzo asked in the chat here, if the dashboard can be customized by the user, adding and rearranging different charts and tables. At this point, the dashboard is a fixed dashboard where we're presenting kind of those fixed widgets to you, but that's certainly something that we're considering going forward, providing different views into information and things like that. The last piece that I want to show here on this page is this material detail section here, and a couple things that I want to call out on this. This is a good way to see how that material is kind of spread out across your enterprise, and at a glance, you can notice that the new Anthony facility actually has cases of all 3 of these materials, has inventory for all 3 of these materials that we know are confirmed duplicates. So right there, you have an opportunity to really kind of understand at a high level how this duplicate, kind of material is spread out. But you're also able to see things like, criticality. So it gives you an opportunity as well to see, well, okay, in one instance, this is an A criticality part, but in the other 2, it's a B criticality part. Is that, a sign of dirty data in our source system that we need to go in there and clean up? Is there, material data record that we, or master data record that we have to go in there and clean up for this particular material? And we also, in this view, provide you a glimpse at the bill of materials that a given material is a part of. So again, kind of doubling down on this example here, you really only see that this is tied to one bill of material, even though it's the same material in the same facility, it's really only utilized one. So ways to give you a little bit more insight into where these materials are, and opportunities to consolidate under a golden record and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pop over into our inventory recommendations to show those to y'all, and then we'll wrap up and leave the time open for any kind of questions and things like that. So real quickly, before I go into the recommendations specifically, what we'll do here is we'll present you, kind of what that opportunity that's been verified across the enterprise and what remains to be verified across the enterprise, as well as giving you a facility by facility breakdown of what that opportunity looks like. There's some other dashboarding and reporting that gets into a bit more detail about how many recommendations are outstanding for each facility. And the nice thing about this is, at various levels of your organization, it's easy to understand how progress is being made in Verism. For those folks who sit, kind of above the facility level, you can see how this different facilities are implementing, how different facilities are succeeding with the application. For folks at that facility leadership level, it's really easy to understand how your particular facility is doing, not only by itself, but also in relation to your peers. And then for those users that are down on the floor, they can see really quickly what are those high value opportunities that I need to target first as I'm going through my review. So let me go ahead and dive into one of our cards here. So this is how we'll show you those materials that we think you have an opportunity to lower the inventory on. So across the top here, we're going to highlight the, kind of what Verism has identified as the opportunity for this particular material. We'll provide you some context on what you're showing or how you're holding this material today. So here's where that safety stock that you currently have coming from your ERP is going to show. And then we'll present you the Verism recommendation here that our models have spit out based on all that we know about your material. One of the things that I really like about these cards in particular is it gives your folks the opportunity to view really all of the information that they need in one single pane of glass to make an informed decision very quickly about this given material. We show you things like the inventory on hand, things like the, kind of what BOMs it's a part of, as well as glimpses into the recent goods movement and purchase order history of a particular material. If you want to dig in a bit deeper, you can do that really easily as well and understand, what has the lead time been for particular order events? What has the quantity been for particular order events? And use all of that to inform the decision that you're going to make here. One of the things that I think is pretty interesting as well is, we will also present you kind of a range of options. So you can get to see in context, in this case, they're all two, but if Verism was recommending more or, one in some cases, right, you'll be able to see kind of relative to the service level you'd like to achieve for this material, where Verism thinks you could stock this material and still achieve that service level. So in this case, we think you'd be covered with 2 across the board, but you have that optionality to kind of determine what makes the most sense for you. And then finally, this is where the artificial intelligence and the machine learning really can, gain insights from the human beings that work in your facilities day in and day out and are intimately familiar with this specific material. The easy option is, they could agree. And if you think that the Verism recommendation makes sense, you click the agree button and you're kind of off to the races. But we also grab some more information if you opt to disagree. So if you opt to disagree, we'll ask you to input a new safety stock. We'll ask you to give us a reason as to why, and then you have the ability here in this field to type in more information about why this particular recommendation that Verism presented is not going to work for your particular organization. And the nice thing is the artificial intelligence takes this, learns from it, and over time, as your users go in and review more and more and more materials, starts to get a better sense of what your risk tolerance looks like and what material or what recommendations you're more likely to accept. So, over time, what you will see is these recommendation numbers here will actually shift towards, again, what your particular organization is more likely to accept than strictly what mathematically is going to help hit that service level. So over time, the more you use Verism, the more we learn, and the easier it is to make smart decisions because we continue to learn alongside you as you're going through and reviewing these recommendations. The last bit I want to show here in the application before moving to the Q&A period is what we're doing on the risk reduction side. So, at first glance, this card looks very, very similar to what we were just looking at. Couple of different things that we're highlighting here, though. So what we're able to do utilizing the exact same model is understand or calculate rather an expected service level. So what we're doing here is we're taking a look at your safety stock policy, taking a look at that goods movement and purchase order history, taking a look at that lead time history. And from that, trying to derive what we think your service level actually is for this given material. The same way that we make recommendations where we suggest you can lower things, we're going to make those similar recommendations, again, kind of a range here of what we suggest you should do to raise your inventory to hit the service level that you have told us you'd like to hit, based on the criticality of material. We're also going to try to calculate how many stock outs you may have had for this given material in the last year, and present that here as a couple of different data points for you to utilize to really start quantifying some of the risk that you might have within your inventory. And again, the similar kind of agree, disagree functionality is available here. So if you disagree, same thing, you're going to present us with a safety stock or reason and any additional information that you might have. And again, we're going to continue to learn and continue to improve the models based on the inputs that you provide us. So that was everything that I had here. Go ahead and open it up to any questions that folks want to either drop in the chat or utilizing the Q&A functionality within Zoom.
Thanks, Danny. That was really, really great. I do have a couple questions that have been holding. So one is, this is great, but can't I just build this myself? I mean, why do I need to purchase Verism solution? Why can't I just hire a data scientist and get the same result?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And you certainly can, right? We're not saying that you can't do those things. Verism just makes it a lot easier to do those things for you. And the nice thing is we provide you really kind of, like I said earlier, data science out of the box and kind of data science at scale. So as opposed to hiring an individual data scientist or a team of data scientists, which gets very costly very quickly, you can make a much smaller investment in a tool like Verism and still get a lot of the same benefits in terms of introducing probabilistic thinking to your inventory strategy. And kind of the other side of that coin as well, like I mentioned, folks can do all sorts of fantastic and magic-like things in Excel, but it's a very brittle system where it doesn't grow over time. You have to manually make changes every time you want to change kind of the rules that are driving your policies. Whereas Verism does all of that for you. We do the learning on the fly along the information that you get from us. And again, it's something that we can grow alongside you without having to necessarily make that big, heavy data science investment.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I think the other thing to kind of reinforce is we're learning from everybody's data. And if you hire data scientists, they're only going to learn from your data. And so we're kind of learning at an exponential level because we're doing this across multiple industries as well, to really learn and improve. So
that's a great call out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so another question, and I love this because I used to work for an ERP company, is, like I'm spending all of my time, my company, with these huge upgrades and implementations. So, can you be a little more prescriptive about how long does it take and how many resources do you need? Because the IT team is really, really busy.
Yeah, no, a great question. So, as far as how long this project takes, really, you can start to kind of from the day that you sign the contract, there's about a 60-day window where we're doing some work with our team and your team working together to make sure that we have all the data mapped correctly and things like that. And from there, you start generating value and start looking at recommendations. We typically work with a fairly small group of users in the early stage of the process to get things implemented. It is very rare that I am on a call with more than 3 or 4 people at a customer organization. And that's running the gamut, from procurement folks and IT folks and, maintenance folks are all kind of in that same group. So really, really small groups can get this up and running without pulling from an already thin IT team. It's a really, really light lift from that technical implementation perspective, which again, I think is another incredibly compelling thing, because you can get this up and running with a small group of facilities, do a proof of concept, and expand without a ton of risk and without a ton of overhead.
Perfect. And I think for me, a follow-up to that would be, okay, so it's a small team in terms of the technical implementation, but as I bring new employees in, is it going to take them 2 months to figure out the system, or can they get it easier?
Yeah, that's a great question. And hopefully what I think folks saw in the presentation there is that it's really a pretty easy to understand application, especially relative to some of the experiences that folks might have with their ERP, that it's a lot of data crammed into small screens. It's kind of tough to parse out what you're looking at unless you're really, really well versed in it. Anybody can kind of pick up Verism and take a look and click through and get a sense of kind of what we're looking at and what we're presenting without a ton of training, which is a thing that I think is really great. And we try really hard to make sure that as we bring out new functionality, it looks and feels very similar to kind of what has come before it, so that as we're bringing new things in, you don't have to do a bunch of retraining to take advantage of new development that Verism is doing. Your folks that have already gotten accustomed to it can just keep chugging right along. So.
Yep, great. So one more question, which was around, you're calling it augmenting humans, but I think we've thought for a long time that AI was going to replace humans.
Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify that? Does this replace people?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely not. Rather, yeah, I can clarify that. And absolutely not. It does not replace people. I'm very clear there. I mean, one of the things that I personally think is the most exciting about augmented reality is that, it does things that humans can't do so that humans can do things that humans do better, right? We cannot in any way replace the institutional knowledge that a reliability engineer or a storeroom manager that's been with your organization for 20 years has, no matter how advanced or complicated our models get. So our models in many ways are really dependent on that context that those folks have to get better, and not at all a replacement, but rather lets folks kind of move the tedium further down the stack and focus on kind of higher value activities out of the gates, because the AI can learn over time and then really start to spit out those kind of anomalies and those things that are like, you're a much smarter person with a full brain. Like, please take a look at this and tell me where we're wrong.
Yeah, I think it's so funny. So I started my career right out of engineering school with Whirlpool in maintenance. And one of the first projects that they gave me was to go through, burden stores at the facility and figure out kind of what was there. And we had, inventory that we didn't even need anymore because the machines weren't there and what. And I look at what a lot of companies are doing today, and it hasn't changed. Like, it's still, so for me, it's part of the reason I came to Verism. And I was like, oh, this just makes so much sense. Right. So I think we might have time for one more question. And I think this is a good one. And I know we've heard it multiple times. This is great, but direct materials is my bigger spend. It's super critical for my business. I mean, really, shouldn't I start there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly you can. But I think one of the really nice things about starting in the MRO space is it really kind of reinforces what we've been talking about all along, right? Verism is an incredibly easy, lightweight application, lightweight project to get up and running. And if you start in MRO, there's kind of less lights on you, right? Because you don't have as big of an impact as you would on the direct material side. And it's a good way to kick the tires on new and kind of exciting technology that's starting to get really practical really quickly. And again, kind of like we mentioned earlier, I think it's fair to reinforce the importance of MRO. If your machines aren't up and running, it doesn't really matter what your direct material strategy is if you can't keep your lines up. So there's a lot of kind of layers here that make MRO a great place to start, and it's a great place to drive value in a corner of your operations that that folks might otherwise overlook. So,
Right. Yeah, I think it's the space that's had the least innovation over the last
mhm,
20 years as well. And for me, like part of the reason I'm such an advocate for starting with MRO is, I've done a ton of projects in my career, and fortunately, I wasn't involved in the big ones that failed,
mhm,
but I've seen several where instead of kind of starting
mhm,
innovating in a space that you can actually understand and manage, they
mhm.
kind of went to that high risk space.
Yeah,
And there's just so much going on there. It can be a great solution and still not be adopted or still have
right.
options. So I'm always an advocate for, have a really pragmatic approach for innovation and how you're introducing that, because there's also the cultural adoption.
Yeah.
People are afraid of artificial intelligence. It's a black box. So this kind of gets you a little area where you can really build some good use cases, I think, as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an excellent call. Yeah, that idea of kind of iterative innovation, I think, is really interesting and something that you can kind of get away with in the MRO space because you don't necessarily have to start with all of your operations. You can start with a small group, and it lends itself really well
Yeah,
to building that confidence and slowly changing that culture over time.
absolutely. All right. Well, Danny, I am so appreciative. I thought the session was great. I hope everyone else enjoyed it too. We would love to hear from you. Danny and I are both available on LinkedIn, or you can actually get to us through the Verism website. Shoot me an email, christine.barnhart@verism.com. Comments, feedbacks, insights, whatever it may be, we definitely want to hear from you.